Your business may not be able to sell to the U.S. government if you don't have a GSA schedule. President Trump just signed an executive order that could massively change how businesses of all sizes sell to federal agencies. And if you don't have a GSA schedule, you better pay attention. On March 20th, 2025, President Trump signed an executive order consolidating federal procurement for common goods and services in the General Service Administration. GSA is the General Services Administration. They control Sam.gov, for example, but many people think of them as not an agency, but a contract vehicle, or often referred to as GSA schedules. Executive order says it's time to return GSA to its original purpose, putting it back in the driver's seat as the federal government's main buyer for everyday products and services. Right now, companies can sell to any federal agency. Some federal agencies use GSA and some don't. For example, when I was a procurement officer for the United States Air Force, I never used GSA to make purchases from companies. I would put small businesses on contract for, say, cybersecurity services or software. We might be developing a technology, but you don't have to use GSA, or at least you didn't up to this point, to put those companies on contract. I had a procurement office, and my contracting officers and I, as a program manager, would figure out how to put the companies on contract that we needed services from, technology from, products from. Let's go over a timeline. Agencies will have 30 days to tell GSA how they're going to let them take over. And GSA has 90 days to figure out how they're going to centralize everything. This is really interesting to me, considering the massive GSA layoffs that have been occurring since President Trump and DOGE have been involved. So the big question is, what does this mean for your business? Well, if you already have a GSA schedule, you could become the go-to buyer for the U.S. federal government, at least for common goods and services. If you don't have a GSA schedule, it could become a lot harder for you to sell to federal agencies. But what is GSA anyway? And what is a contract vehicle? You may be watching this for the first time, just thinking about government contracting, and you're hearing a bunch of terms that you don't understand. Well, GSA stands for the General Services Administration. It was established in 1949 to be the central procurement system for federal agencies. In other words, it was created to simplify how the government buys things. So this is something that has been happening for years. The government has always been looking at how they could simplify purchases, how they could provide oversight and make sure bad stuff doesn't happen, to make sure that we don't spend $300 on toilet seats or hammers. So despite the fact that GSA was supposed to become a central buyer, over time, and especially in the 1990s when several reforms came out to the acquisitions process, federal agencies assumed more independence and power to buy things on their own. So right now, you can sell directly to any of the federal agencies. There are sole source contracts, and federal agencies have their own contract vehicles. They openly compete RFPs and RFQs on Sam.gov. I talk about sources sought all the time. So GSA now is optional. Think about it like this. If you are a federal agency, instead of having to have your own contracting officers and program managers and a whole procurement team, you could have GSA take care of the purchasing for you. A GSA schedule is like being listed in an exclusive catalog for federal agencies to purchase from. You go through a detailed vetting process with GSA if you want to be included, where they review things like,
after going through the course, I was able to land a client that pays me a monthly retainer to actually help them develop their business and go after these federal contracts.
I was able to get a consulting gig with a software company that currently works with the intelligence community.
So 27 years old, you've never worked in government contracting, you've never worked as a consultant, and you just closed your first deal. Is that correct?
That's fair. And I've got a couple small projects on the side as well. So definitely probably my best investment I've made all year.
A cold call landed a 9-figure government contract.
Start a consulting business and a high salaried position as a account executive in public sales. So you're doing both of those things.
I'm living the best of both worlds right now.
My name is Mike Knickerbocker. I am a naval officer that's getting ready to retire. Right now, I have 3 firm clients and 2 more perspectives. I'm able to provide value across different industries because the skill set that I learned through the course and was able to apply my own experience.
GovClose came and it was a no-brainer. I wanted some secret sauce.
This has allowed me to live in Germany. It's a little hazy today, but we can do that. You see?
Oh yeah, dude, that's beautiful.
The content, the training, it's invaluable. It's rigorous.
Back to the video. Your pricing and your past performance. But once eventually you do get approved, now federal agencies can buy directly from companies listed in GSA without necessarily having to put out competitive bids, although they still often do. Now, here's the kick. Right now, if you're a small business registered in Sam.gov, you can find an RFP or an RFQ and write a proposal on that, potentially win a contract. Although if you watch my content, you know that the process starts a long time before that solicitation actually comes out. But for GSA purchasing, you have to be on the GSA schedule or on a GSA contract in order to even make a bid. And it could take 6 to 12 months just to get approved to be on GSA. It's frankly a huge pain in the ass and takes a long time. So if the federal agency you're selling to decides or is forced to start using GSA and you don't have a GSA schedule, you might be SOL. So big picture is the executive order wants to return GSA back to its original purpose, reduce inefficiency, reduce duplicative purchasing for the government. I have my own questions as to whether or not GSA ever actually served that original purpose. And honestly, right now, it is too early to tell what's going to happen as far as the executive order and will GSA take over. The executive order could push the government back to a more centralized model, but that will make things more restrictive. And in an agency where there have already been massive layoffs, I have my own doubts as to how effective this will actually be. So will you actually have to have a GSA schedule to sell to the government? Well, if I was selling simple services, IT, office supplies, I would be looking at getting that GSA schedule, although it is definitely too early to tell if you are actually going to need it. Look, if you're following our content, you know I always want to have a backup plan. This came from my flying days, and it carried on into my acquisitions days in the Air Force, and now as a trainer of government contract sales executives and sales teams. And look, if you go and get yourself a GSA schedule, as much of a pain in the ass as that is, and as long as it takes, right now I would rather have it than not if I was in the government contracting space, especially in the sectors that they're describing in the memo and that I've talked about on this video. Look, the bottom line is the government is changing the way it makes some purchases. This is something that has happened over and over again throughout the history of this country. And right now, they are pushing GSA. And by the way, if you want a GSA preparation checklist, then just drop a comment in this video and I'll get you that checklist. And they're also pushing things like other transaction authority. Check that video out next, because that's going to show you a much faster way that the government's going to be making purchases, especially for things like software and hardware. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure to stay updated, subscribe to our channel. I'll be putting out live sessions where we do Q&A. And also on Fridays, we'll be pushing out a premiere video talking about the latest changes in government contracting, how you can take advantage of it, how you can start a career here if you're looking for a career change. Thanks again for watching. Take care.